We're live. Welcome, Facebook and YouTube. This is Listen Real Family Talk, and I'm Karan. This is Karina.
And I'm Terry. How are you?
It's almost the end of February, and we're doing our one show a month as usual.
Yes, and we're so glad you joined us.
And tonight, I'm going to have Mom share what we're going to be talking about.
So tonight we're going to talk about family for real. We have this question that we're going to ask you. When is enough to walk away from family and friends when trying to deal with family issues? When is enough enough? We had that question given to us by one of our former guests. And you can say her name, Karan, because I don't want to mess it up.
Okay, Sandy. And she'll be joining us at about 7:30.
Okay, great. Mine is echoing, and I don't know why my mic is echoing. I don't have anything else connected in here.
We can't hear the echo. It's just
okay. Good. So when you define the word enough, what does that mean to you, Karan? The word enough.
I don't know. It could be full or the end. Like full, filled up. Like totally encompassed. Or just the end.
I've had it, right?
Huh?
I've had it, right?
You could say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of people are getting to that point now in their lives. They're to this point where I've had it. I don't care if it's family. I don't care if it's friends. I don't care if it's enemies. I just heard an incident here in Indianapolis that happened on January the 3rd. And it is an unbelievable incident. So there were 3 young Black men who were coming out of Castleton Mall. And they walked up to the wrong car and tried to get in. There was a man sitting inside the car with a gun on his lap. And he just started shooting them. He jumps out of the car and kills one of them, chases the other one down, and shoots him. Just for no reason.
Wow.
Just because they went to the wrong car door.
Wow.
Enough really is enough.
Wow.
We have to stop and think that we are all people. Is that what we do? We hunt each other and shoot each other like dogs?
The world tells you that.
So, when we look at talking about the fruits of the Spirit, putting them into action, where does it all start with family? Well, guess what? God instituted family right from the beginning in the book of Genesis. In Genesis 2:18, he said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make for him a helpmate." And Eve was created from his side. How interesting. God created something just special for man. And then he blessed them and he told them to go and be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and to also subdue the earth. And he gave everything uh, that he had created to them and he put them over everything. But of course, man sinned. And so, guess what happened? All of these other horrible things that wasn't in God's plan for family started happening. That's really how it worked, you guys. And so just imagine if we could only be obedient to who God has created each one of us to be. So he's given each one of us a position. He's given man his position. He's given woman her position. He's given children their position. He's even given siblings their position. And that's how a family. So, when is enough enough with family and friends? Can you answer that question for me, Karan? Can you answer it yet?
When is enough enough? I think you have to finish that sentence. When is enough enough? When dealing with issues?
Right.
When not dealing with issues? When trying to set up boundaries? I think you have to finish that sentence. I think what we're talking about today is with dealing with family issues or personal issues. I think you have to start with setting up and creating boundaries. And there you can label your enough is enough. But until you have those boundaries created and expressed and understood, because you can communicate things and people don't understand them. So they have to be able to understand them. And then once that happens, then you can have an understanding and define that your enough is enough.
Okay, so with that, I think also with those responsibilities that each one of those groups of people have in a family, you have to understand who you are in the family as well. So am I the brother and sister? What story do we know about in the Old Testament about two brothers? Right from the beginning.
Adam and Eve's sons?
Yes. What's their names?
Adam and Eve's sons.
Cain and Abel. Right from the beginning. Satan still, because man had sinned, Satan had an end. He had an end on jealousy. He had an end on how to destroy two brothers who were to love each other. And from that day on, we can look through the Bible and see brothers and sisters fighting and doing things to each other. We can also look at the man and woman. And we can go to the next set of people, which would be Noah. Noah and the ark. And the reason he had to build the ark. What are some of the reasons, Karan?
Sin.
Mm-hmm. But what kind of sin? This time it was very specific sin.
Oh, it was? I didn't know that.
Oh. Yeah, people were doing all kinds of sexual things. They were doing building idols and worshiping idols, and they were turning away from God and weren't doing anything that God had asked them to do. They were, it's just, if you read it, it was just short of being Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the next one after Noah and the ark, and God destroys the whole world. So again, people not doing what God had told them to do. You know, husbands and wives, and brothers and sisters, and siblings, and um, parents and children. Um, so let's look at some of the things and responsibilities. Can you pull it up, or is Karina not going to let you pull anything up? See if you can pull up Ephesians 5:25 through 28. Ephesians 5:25 through 28.
Ephesians 5.
Yes.
You said verse 25.
Yes.
All right. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her a holy cleansing, her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to him as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself.
Yeah. When we have heard stuff that comes out about adultery and fornication and all those kinds of things, this is what keeps us divided, keeps us fighting, and keeps family issues going. You know, sometimes husbands are doing things that they don't love their wives. They don't love their wives as their own body. They don't cherish and take away the blemishes and the stains and all that stuff that it says there. Um, then it talks about fathers. Go right after that, Ephesians 6:4.
Ephesians 6:4, you said?
Yes.
Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord.
So what's going on here is telling you, don't make your children angry at you. Don't do those things that can cause them to hate you or want to get away from you. And they're talking to fathers here. But it goes across the board. Mothers shouldn't do those things either, because sometimes in our families nowadays, we don't have a father. We just have a mother. How can we do the things that God has asked us to do so that families won't have to get to enough is enough? Um, I want you to read this one, Ephesians 5:22 through 23 for us.
You said 5:22 through 23. Didn't I just read that?
No, you read the one about husbands. This is about wives.
Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body. of which he is the Savior. Okay.
Yes, now no, it says here that the man is the head of the woman, like Christ is the head of the church. Now, and so what we do is we kind of take this completely out of context. God being the head of the church means that he's guiding the church to do the right thing, telling you husbands, guide your wives, and they'll let you be the head in doing the right thing. We always want to make this like women can't think. I actually even read something yesterday that I just kind of totally disagreed with, because it said that women are weaker than men. We are in strength wise, some women are, but that's not what we're talking about. Strength. We're talking about um, the husband should be leading his family to do what is correct and decent. And then we won't get to enough is enough, you guys. What we do is we get so far away from the easy stuff about how life should be, even if we have challenges. Read 1 Timothy 5 and 14. 1 Timothy 5 and 14 for me, Corinne.
First Timothy 5 and 14 says, so I counsel younger widows to marry, to have children, to manage their homes, and to give the enemy no opportunity for slander.
Yes, yes, yes. This is the older woman telling the younger woman how she should manage her household, so that there won't be any way for people to be saying that she's doing things that are not in order. One of the things we see here about God is he has some order to how he wants us to live. And we just want to live in any old kind of way. We want to live like the world tells us that everything is okay to do. And you can't tell me that I'm doing anything wrong, because I'm doing whatever I want to do. It's just kind of really messy. So when is enough actually enough? Let's read Exodus 20 and 12. And this one talks about the children. See, everybody has their role. Children, Exodus 20 and 12.
All right. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God has given you, is giving you.
Yes, honor your father and your mother. A big one, because that's one with a promise. God says he'll let you live a long time. Oh, if we could only just stop and think. We talked about those 9 fruits of the Spirit, and we could stop and think, how do we live these out in our real lives? How do we, as a brother, we're going to talk about siblings next, and I think this one's really good too. So in 1 Timothy 5 and 1 through 3 talks about siblings. And like I said, God has a structure. He's always had a structure to what he wants for mankind. Mankind's messed it up because Adam and Eve messed it up. 1 Timothy 5 and 1 through 3.
1 Timothy 5, 1 through 3. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need.
Telling you how we should relate to people who are older than us, to people who are younger than us, to people who are male, to people who are female. You know, we're not supposed to have all this lust and anxiety and things that go on in the world now. I want to go to bed with her. I like the way her body looks. You know, we get so confused. That's why we have all these fights and quarrels with each other. The Bible tells us you have all these things because you envy and have strife and you do all those things. But God has an order. And the reason he has an order is because he is in charge. And we don't want anybody to be in charge of us. That's where we are now in our society. Nobody wants anybody to be in charge. And you only let people be in charge who are going to do decent and right things. Well, we will say that. We're not talking about just letting the devil run amok, because he will. So when is enough enough? And your family issues, and it's time to let go and leave them alone. What we're talking about here is an order that God has, and we'll never get to that point where enough is enough. If we could get ourselves, okay, if I'm dealing, here's a good example. I'm dealing with my sister. How do I deal with my sibling? How do I make sure that we don't have a problem after an issue? That's a hard one. I recently just had that experience, and I'm still working on it because I didn't think it was an issue. I thought I had explained all that was expected, but then it still came up to be an issue. But here's the thing for me is I'm good with it. I'm ready to move on, but I have to wait to see where my sister is and how she's going to move on. Because it wasn't anything. It wasn't anything for anybody, for anything that happened to have happened. It really was not. But sometimes we have to just stop ourselves and say, what am I getting mad about? You know, if my sister dies tomorrow, will I have said, oh, I love you? You know, that little bitty thing wasn't big enough for me to not be able to say, I love you. You miss those opportunities when you get to enough is enough and you can't deal with the issue. Now, there will be some things because God tells you that if you do all you can to live at peace with people, that's all you can do. And if you felt you've done all that, but again, we all have to check ourselves. We all have to check ourselves because that's really what God is telling us to do here. He's telling us to check yourself. Like we've always talked about right from the beginning, check your heart.
Well, I think it's hard for people to check themselves when they don't have any self-awareness. I think that's a huge thing with people that I'm seeing nowadays is that people are not self-aware. And when I say self-aware, I mean how you interact with others, your verbal communication, your body communication, the way things come across. Those are things that are real. It's not just a subliminal message or, you know, something I see that you don't see that you're not trying to do. I think that people need to understand that it's more than just a conversation. It's more than just you saying words to me that we both speak the English language. I have to be able to have an understanding to internalize what you are trying to share with me. And sometimes people can't do that because of self-awareness. You know?
And when I hear you say self-aware for me, and I'm gonna let Kay Sandy who's come in, I'm gonna let her define what she thinks self-awareness is. When I hear you say self-awareness for me, self-awareness is that every time that I see someone do something, every time that I see someone say something, do I respond the same way every time to what they're saying or doing? I have to be self-aware for myself to understand that maybe I might be interpreting that wrong too. So I might need to say, well, wait a minute. Did you say this? And what did you mean by it? Because that really is real self-awareness, is when I want to interpret what you are doing, interpret what you said negatively, not and I don't necessarily always mean negatively. It's just because I think that you're this way and you may not be,
Right.
but because I haven't asked you and I have not, then I'm going to go off this way and I'm gonna start shooting you because you done came up to my car and touched the handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you think, Kay Sandy?
Self-awareness to me is being totally aware of yourself and knowing how your emotions are, your mental, physical, everything, being totally aware of everything of yourself. So if I know that how I feel about somebody and I go around them and I'm still a little uneasy around them, being aware of that. So if having my attitude, for one, having when I'm around that person, being aware of my attitude, my tone, my body language, how I look, how I speak, if I'm making sure that I'm not rolling my eyes in the back of my head, rolling my eyes, doing anything that is going to project attitude towards that person when I know that I still feel some way about that person. Now, if I don't feel a way about that person, and I may just be having a bad day, and I know that I may be giving off body language that is speaking otherwise to that person, then I may go back to that person and be like, hey, I apologize. I realized that I had an off day and I may have been projecting something onto to you that was not meant to you. That's being self-aware. And there's not a lot of people that are self-aware. And it may be, I may be in beef with somebody and I may go to them and be like, hey, I really didn't mean to say what I said to you. Or I may have said it, but I didn't mean to say it like that. So it's just being self-aware of how you say things and how you do things. And there's not a lot of people that's like that. I have people in my family that haven't forgiven me from when I was out in the world, and they walk right past me, don't even speak to me. And I don't even know if they're aware of that. But I am totally aware of that, and I still try to speak to them. So it's just the whole self-awareness of everything around you and what you're going through. You can be having the worst week of your life, but don't project that onto other people.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Mom.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. What I want to say is, like when I was talking to earlier, to the different roles that each one of us play. So we have to be self-aware of that too. If I'm playing the role of mother, if I'm playing the role of father, if I'm playing the role of husband, if I'm playing the role of sister, if I'm playing the role of brother. See, all of these things play a part. And again, sin causes us to do all those other things that you talked about, Kay said. It causes us to, I can walk past you and not speak to you, and you could have spoken to me. That used to happen to me all the time at work, every day. And I would still speak to the lady, but she wouldn't speak. Sometimes she would, sometimes she wouldn't, but I would just speak and just keep right on moving. And so we have to start to understand that I need to check me first. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. I need to check me first and make sure that I'm in line and in order. Okay, make sure I'm in line and in order. And if I ain't, like you said, I may be having a bad day. I can't project that on somebody else. I can't say that, oh, I don't like the way he looked, so I got mad and I'm gonna take my toys and I'm going home. I don't like what she said, and I don't even know whether she was saying it to me or not, but she said it and I heard it and she offended me. We got to stop all that. That's what God doesn't want us to do. That's where he doesn't want us to be. He wants us to be more in the sense and in the line of how he tells us what to do here. Be a good brother, be a good sister, be a good mother, I gave you scriptures as to the good mothers, the good fathers, and if you don't know any of them, just take Jesus. He's the good brother to us, you guys. He has the whole plan. And the thing about it is, again, we have to learn, and this is the hard word. So one of them is roles. Now, I told you I was going to tell you 3 words. One of them is roles. We all have a role to play in society. I don't care what position you in, what location you in. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're white, you're black, you're green, whatever. I don't care if you're gay, you're straight, whatever. You have a role, and you have to play it as it is given to you to make sure that everybody else is okay. And so if I'm playing my role good and you're playing yours good, guess what? It'll work out. But the other thing is we have to respect each other. That's a big one. That's a big one. Respect. And what God says here is, if you can't respect your parents, listen to this. If you can't respect your parents, you won't respect God or anybody else. What do you guys think about that? I'll let y'all answer.
I think that's a big one. I think I'm going to start first with what the world says is that people have to earn your respect. And I think people say that without really going into the meaning of that. Because most of the time, if you're just meeting a stranger isn't earning anybody's respect. They're not earning your respect. So, sometimes it's just in passing. You know what I'm saying? And so you don't have to be so careless with other people and their feelings because you feel that you're just the priority of your life. We have to be so self-aware that we are aware of the people around us. We are aware that we have to project love and we have to project kindness and gentleness and caring with people around us, no matter, like you guys said, what's going on within me. I don't care if I don't know you. I don't have to not hold the door open because I'm having a bad day when I leave the grocery store. I don't have to not care about you because I bought something at this fast food joint and I don't want to keep it in my car, so I'm just throwing it out on the street. Like, I don't have to not care about the community because I'm caring about my car. Like, people are just so selfish. We're selfish. And the thing is that we think when our parents raise us and when we become adults, that is it. It's about us. It ain't about them. It ain't about nobody else but the problems and the issues that we have in our life. We have to be what God asked us to be. Love Him first. Love our neighbors as ourselves. No matter what. No matter the cost. And most of the time, it doesn't cost anything except a second of thinking and being in the moment. That's it. So respecting your parents, why wouldn't you respect your parents? Now, there are some people whose parents abuse them, hurt them. Those people should be able to get help so they can rid their heart and their mind of the bitterness that had happened to them as a child. Because I'm not going to take that away from them. There are things that happen to people at different times in their life, some earlier than others. That doesn't give you permission, though, to disrespect, hate, be bitter, stay broken, and dislike people. That does not give you the excuse. But there are people who do want to help you, who do want to love you, who will act as your parent and will help and support you if you allow them. But the self-awareness is a huge thing that will allow you to be healed so that you can really be what God has called humanity to be. And I'll shut up there. Go ahead, Kay Sandy.
So Corinne actually know that I just went through something like this. Not just came out of it through my childhood, but more recently, I had to live with I had to live with my biological father, and it was not the easiest thing to do. And Corinne called and checked on me. Well, she texts me weekly. We talked probably bi-weekly, and each week she was like, "You all right?" And I some days, sometimes I just cried on the phone a little bit, and then we would talk through it. But she was amazed at how I was coasting through it, because I remained respectful when I was being disrespected. A lot of the times, I and I could have been disrespectful, and I know that in the past, as a teenager, when I was very disrespectful, I learned how to remain respectful. Um, and I've been helping as a foster mother, and I have a bonus son. And I talk to other people, other adults and young kids, and I often use that that scripture, honor thy mother and thy father, and that's a scripture that I had trouble with in my early 20s. How can I honor thy mother and father when I don't feel that they honor me or they like me or they've been there for me? And as a 42-year-old, I'm now getting it that no matter what, they gave me life and I have to respect them and I honor them by respecting them no matter what they do to me. Um, I can set boundaries for them respectfully. Um, and that's what I've had to do in this season of my life. I've had to set healthy boundaries for each of my parents. I've had to defend myself and speak up for myself, but I've been able to do it respectfully. I haven't been disrespectful. I've had to. It was hard trying to defend myself and remain respectful, remembering that my father was my father. Um, Sometimes my mother is my mother, but when the Bible says, honor thy mother and thy father, and all thy days will be long, you have to remember that. And sometimes setting boundaries for your parents, that is the toughest. But sometimes it's necessary, especially when the relationships have been unhealthy and they've been the most toxic. Um, that is necessary. And I've had to talk to certain people and I'll be like, you could have said that a little nicer. And I've learned how to say things with love. And me and my dad, we've started a little dialogue since I've moved out. Um, I'm not sure how he's taken things because the last dialogue that I've said, I was like, I tried to talk to you while I was there, but it was kind of hard. And he hasn't responded back, but I've learned that sometimes our intentions are good, but we can't help how other people take them. As long as we know that we do it with love and respect, the respect is the main part.
Well, thank you for sharing. And, we are looking at this. When is enough when you have issues in your family? And from what I'm hearing, we never get to a point where enough is enough because what we really need to do is figure out each individual person, because everybody, like you said, and everybody's not going to become self-aware. But that's what we're talking about it today, so that you can start to think about it and think about, how do I destroy? Because see, here's Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And he does it in every situation. And he especially wants to do it in families, because God has ordained the family to be the piece that shows the world his love. And he did it through Adam and Eve, and he gave them children. And he's continually, nothing has changed with that about God and who he is. And it can't change no matter what man does. And man has done all kinds of things, to change that. But that is how God has structured. God is an ordered God. That's how he structured it. And everybody has their role, and everybody has to learn to respect each other. But then here's the other piece. You and me, the father, the brothers, the sisters, we all are responsible for what we do. So our last word is responsibility. You have to take on the 3 R's. We have a role. We have to respect each other, but you have to take on the responsibilities of the things that you do. Because see, in the end, God tells us that you're going to stand before him and give an account for the things that you've done in your body that you didn't ask him to forgive you for. Because see, he says he's faithful and just, and he will forgive us for our sins if we belong to him. So he's not going to bring those back up if we've asked him to forgive us. But what the problem is here is most of us continue, like you said, you still have an issue with your father. You just told us that you were living with him here, evidently here recently, and you're still working through that thing, whatever it has been in your whole life. And now you're 42 and you're still working through it. There has to be some point when we talk about enough is enough, and we've been talking about that from the beginning. And it's not that enough is enough and I want to leave you alone, Dad. It's enough is enough, Dad. What have we learned and how can we move on so that we can become a loving family? Enough is enough, sister. How can we move on when you see my husband and you look at him and you think he has some kind of demeanor, and instead of you saying, "Hey, Nate, are you mad about something?" Or hey, Nate, or did we do something wrong? Or, not just necessarily do I need to put on a mask, because we already told you to put on a mask. We shouldn't have to keep on telling you to put on a mask. You're a grown woman. I shouldn't have to keep on telling a grown woman to put on a mask for a certain reason, okay? But if you're moving on and you thought something was wrong and you didn't like the way somebody looked, hey, what you mad at, Nate? Because what it does, it breaks up that thought that you have. Think about this. It breaks up that thought that you have about how he looks, because he can't answer about how you see him unless you ask him. Come on, y'all, let's make this real. That's what real stuff is.
Right.
I look at you and I see you look a certain way, and so all of a sudden I'm mad because you look this way.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of me saying, "What you looking like that for? Did I do something?"
Yeah.
And that's real. See, that's real. That's how you just ask.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm mad at you. Did I say something? Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say? I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to say anything to offend you, but you took it as an offense, and I don't know that you did. And so you get up and you run away angry, and you're still mad at me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've done the same thing. So it's not something that we don't all do. Self-aware. My role, my respect, my responsibility. What do you guys think about how people respond? Because responsibility is how I respond to what I see happening to me. So what do you guys think?
I I was learning to think. So I know that I was quick to always react instead of taking time to think, before I respond. So I was learning to respond, to really think before I responded. And so I know one of the issues with me and my dad was having conversations, but we didn't know each other. So I was trying to learn him. I don't know if he was really trying to learn me, because when I was going to him to have the conversations about what was bothering me, he didn't want to conversate. He was shut down. And it was like things that he was doing that was making me mad, like cutting lights off. And I'm like, why I come home to the dark all the time, all the time, like things that he was doing. And when I try to have conversation with him about it, he was like, well, do you know how much the light bill is? I'm like, well, you haven't told me yet. Like, I don't know, but I don't have a problem paying it, because that was what my bill was. I was supposed to pay half the light bill. I was like, if you just tell me when the light bill comes, I have no problem paying it. That's what I'm supposed to pay. But that was always our argument. But I was like, and so when I would start giving him what he said, I would give him the difference. He said the light bill was one amount before I got there. I'm like, okay, if that's how much it is, I'll just give you the difference. So he was offended by that. And so I'm like, I felt like I couldn't win for losing, but he never wanted to have a conversation. So I was like, I don't know. At that time, at that point, it was like, I never knew what to do. So I just kind of stayed to myself. I knew I took responsibility for just going off to myself, because I didn't want to force somebody to have a conversation that didn't want to have a conversation. I didn't want to force somebody that didn't want to do what they didn't want to do. Like, you can't, a conversation, two people trying to work something out, it takes two. But I was the only willing party. And you can't force somebody else to be a willing participant. So I know that I took responsibility. I was like, when he put me out, I was like, deuces, I'm out. I couldn't just do it anymore. It was disturbing my peace, and it robbed me of it. The enemy came and did everything it wanted to do with me while I was there. And I let it, because it was just too much for me. But to me, it's like, when one person isn't willing to participate in the relationship, it's hard.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Yeah.
I think, especially when it's family, because me and you talked about that. I think, I don't know if it was Darius Daniels who said that the hardest relationships that we have are first our marital relationships, then our family relationships. Mm-hmm. They're the hardest relationships to keep and to stay sane and to be, stay healthy. And I do believe that, because when I go back to my first marriage, and when I start finding out all these things are going on, the cheating, and then I want to confront you about it, and then you think that it's okay to say sorry, and that's the way we move forward. No, let's get to the issue. Let's get to the issue of this so that it stops happening. How do we get to the issue? Is you have to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And like you said, Kay Sandy, your dad wasn't willing to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
With you, the person that he should be being vulnerable with. And I think that, again, it goes back to being self-aware. Both parties have to be self-aware to work themselves out into a healthy piece of whatever this issue is. And you have to be willing, and you have to want to. So sometimes enough is enough, where you do have to leave the relationship alone. You got to leave people alone. You got to leave them where they at. I came and I met you where you were at. I tried to figure this out with you. I love you. I don't have to leave this saying I hate you, and it doesn't have to be hurtful. But I'm not going to stay in this unhealthy relationship because you want to control it and you want to make me go crazy. Because I feel like in my past relationship, my ex-husband did. He wanted us to stay in this marriage. You know, I'm not signing these divorce documents, but you're not working through it. This isn't healthy for me. So if you aren't going to make the best decision for the whole relationship, I'm going to make the best decision for me. And I think that's where we get to. Sometimes that's where enough is enough takes us to.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to take us there. No, it doesn't have to be a broken relationship. Cheating in marriage doesn't always have to end the marriage. People work through those things, but both parties, whatever the issue is, both parties have to come to a self-awareness of what they brought to whatever the issue was and be able to move past it.
I will say one good thing that came out of that is that it brought me and my mother's relationship. Even though our relationship was rocky during it, it's still sometimes rocky because I have to understand the capacity that she has as a mother, but it brought us closer. It brought us back together where we can. I had to put some more boundaries on that, but it brought us back together where we can spend time together outside of the rest of the family, and I can call her and talk to her sometimes about some things. So I will say through that, because I had to call her like, hey, why'd you have a baby by him? Like I had to question my existence. You could have chose anybody else. Why'd you choose him? Like, but it brought that's the good at the blessing out of the darkness. So if I had to go through it again, I probably would, because God did work on me through all of that.
Hey, you girls are talking it up very well, for our younger people to understand. You know what God has done, and His whole plan for mankind is for family. And so, again, Adam and Eve messed up. You know, they're the ones that messed up. And because of their mess up, Satan now has an end where he can come in and do these kinds of things to kind of divide us. Not kind of divide us, he does it all the time. He divides family members, he divides brothers and sisters, he divides mothers and daughters, he divides fathers and sons, he divides sons and mothers, he divides daughters and fathers, because he knows that if we would only love like God wants us to love, if we would only love our neighbors as ourselves, if we would only love in action, Quran says, because love is not just a word to be spurted out and said. Love is a verb, and so you have to take action. And so, if I love you, I will not do anything knowingly to hurt you. Now, I may hurt you unknowingly, but that's where we get that respect, responsibility, my role. Think about that. If I hurt you unknowingly, I'm going to say, oh, what happened that caused you this hurt? How can we repair it? How can we get back to where we love each other, where I respect you and you respect me? And unfortunately, this is in everything, because guess what? Kay Sandy is a part of my family. She's an extended end of my family. She's off of one of those branches where we're all connected to Jesus. So I can't be disrespectful, disrespondent, or not knowing my role when I'm dealing with Kay Sandy. You know, me and Corinne are blood. Me and Karina are blood, but all of us are connected by the blood. See, the real blood. And so when we think about how we connected by the real blood, how should we be treating each other? We shouldn't be shooting out the window at people because they came up to the car and pulled on the handle. And they were at the wrong car. Something's wrong with that picture, y'all. And God tells us, parents, train up your children in the way that they should go. And when they are old, they will not depart from it. We're not training our children. People, don't have children and let them grow up like wild weeds. Even if you didn't get no training, go find you some. It's out there.
I think the biggest thing, especially when you keep saying this, because we had an incident like this, JD's basketball season. I was waiting in the car with Karina. I often had to go to the car and sometimes breastfeed her because sometimes basketball games are long. And so I went to the car and I'm sitting in the car waiting, and the boys come out. Jason had already came out and got in the car. And the boys, there was another GMC sitting at the door, black, same car. And I'm like, the boys are about to go to that car, Jason. Hey, just yell at them. He's like, oh, no, they're not. They walked up to the car. JD opens the door. And that could have happened. Because people nowadays in this climate are afraid. Why are you sitting in your car, sir or ma'am, with a gun on your lap? Waiting. I mean, just waiting to be offended. That's what our society is just saying today. I'm waiting to be offended or hurt by somebody. That is our expectation. We don't expect good from anybody. We expect killing, hurting, stealing, destroying. That's what we're expecting, and that's why that happened.
That's part of why it happened, but he was a fugitive. It's more to it than that. And so he was kind of sitting in there in desperation of his life. But even with that being said, you should have been at home and not out at Calston Square Mall, which somebody said, with a whole lot of people, and you worry about somebody coming to get you. Don't live that kind of life. The word of God tells you that. Don't live that kind of life where you looking over your shoulder for somebody to get you.
Right.
It's one thing that I stress to the DV victims that I work with is once they flee from their abusers, is especially if they have kids, is to heal from their trauma, not for their kids, but for themselves. Because what I've seen a lot in the community, not just in the Black community, but in the community in general, is generational trauma. And once I got healed out of my domestic violence situation, I was able to look at my mother and see her hurting from all the years of trauma that she's been living with. And that's how I was able to forgive her, basically, because I see that she's still hurting from the pain. And what she does to me, although it does not feel good every time that she continuously to yell at me and with her verbal abuse and stuff, and that's where the healthy boundaries come in at. But I know where it comes from now because she's still hurting. She's still carrying the load. Basically, I can see her carrying her trauma on her shoulders all through her life, from her very first relationship of abuse. I can still see her carrying that in the spirit realm. So I tell people, heal from whatever trauma, your childhood trauma, whatever trauma that you've been through, heal from that so that you can be the mother that you need to be from your kids, and you won't pass that trauma on to your kids. And then talk to your kids about what they just went through so that they can heal from that trauma and they won't grow up into adults with that same trauma. Because basically that's what it is. It's adults now, they're living with all those years of trauma.
And your last thoughts about this, because we are right at the end of closing for the evening, and we have had a wonderful conversation here, because enough is enough. Sometimes when we just have to back up and slow down and say, hey, I need to breathe. I need to get away from this issue. But it's never enough to leave your family, because that's what the devil wants, you guys. He wants you divided. So if you're the one with trauma, get some help. If you're the one who can say, you know what, I heard that wonderful conversation on Listen Real Family Talk, and I know that I need to go talk with some people in my family, because we did have just a misunderstanding that's really nothing, and Satan's not going to divide us. It's not going to happen. We're going to make this world a better place, because we're going to start with our family. And if you can't talk to your family members, always be kind. Live at peace as much as you can with your brethren. And remember to love, because it's an action word. What do you have to say, Corinne, as we close out?
I think this is a good segment to stop on, because I think this leads to the next show. We can talk about creating boundaries from this. And so I think that we all just need to become more self-aware. That's all I'm gonna say. You can't be that enough. You can always be working on yourself.
And with that being said, we'll talk about boundaries next month. Come back, Kay Sandy, because we know that's your other segment that you asked us to do. And we are so glad and happy to have you anytime, and anybody else who wants to come on and share. Yes, Karina, you've done a great job. Thank you so much, Rena. And we will see you next week. Next month. We'll be on one Saturday next month. We'll just pop in and you'll see us and hear us. But we love you, and we want you healed. And we want your family just like God planned it back in Genesis with Adam and Eve. Loving each other, living for each other, and sharing and caring and having your roles, responsibilities, and respect. Talk with you next week. Bye, everybody.
Good night. Bye, guys.